Good day, everyone. This podcast is brought to you as part of the Member Series programme at ITSS Verona. It has been produced by Angelo Caliano, John Devine, Martina Gambacorta, and Omri Brynner. It is part of the international system and world order, focusing in on the Middle East. Today we will be discussing freedom of expression and freedom of worship within Iran. Firstly, we are kindly joined by Dr. Ali Fathollah-Nejad, and then we have an interview with an Iranian convert who left Islam for a small religious movement called Eckankar. We hope you enjoy. Good afternoon, Dr. Ali Fathollah-Nejad. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Could you please describe the role religion plays in modern-day Iran? And is there much tolerance for other religions?
Well, first of all, those are very, as you might know, very broad questions and complex questions. But to put it briefly, in terms of the role of religion in today's Iran, of course, very much is under the influence of the political system, which is the Islamic Republic of Iran that was established after the 1979 Iranian Revolution, and in which the Shia theocracy assumed state power. And for that reason, there is quite a dominance of the Shia confession in the Islamic Republic of Iran. Of course, Iran being largest or the major Shia country, not only in the Middle East, but in the world. But over 4 decades of a real existing Islamism in the country, there has been a process of alienation toward religion, especially toward Islam. As we know from several studies, not only over the past few years, but also before, we see that there is an increasing process of secularization. So there is a considerable part of the Iranian population that has been quite alienated, it seems, from religion per se, because of the very intricate relationship that it has in the country with politics. It is very difficult to state concrete figures or percentage numbers of people who can be described as increasingly secularized over the years. And secondly, of course, according to the Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Iran, there is the state respects monotheistic religions, also recognizes them officially, namely Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, plus Zoroastrianism, which is the chief Iranian religion pre-Islam. All of these religions, they do have the right, according to the Constitution, to put one candidate into the parliament. Of course, some would argue that this is a positive sign of religious tolerance, but on the other hand, just one single candidate from a religious community is probably anywhere sufficient in order to be representative. In addition to that, there are other religions that are banned or that are illegal. For instance, the Baha'i faith, which is a religious minority in Iran, who was interpreted by radical Islamist revolutionaries to be somehow implicated with the state of Israel, because there are also Baha'is in Israel. So against this background, a very negative connotation put on the Baha'is, who are excluded, for instance, from education, also many other opportunities. When it comes to the other sect of Islam, that is the Sunnis, they are actually discriminated against in today's Iran. They have difficulties in terms of worship. So there is a clear discrimination against the Sunnis to the favor of Shias. And another interesting aspect to mention, the Sufis, who are, of course, some kind of perhaps more independent-minded confession, who have also some historical roots in Iran. But over the last few years, there were several instances of confrontation between Sufis and the state. So there's also a very uneasy relationship. Because whatever is perceived to be challenging the domination of the Shia theocracy, political system of the Islamic Republic, can have some problems in Iran.
Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, are these the only 3 religions that are permitted to practice religion freely?
Well, first of all, we have to make the distinction between probably state and society. The elaborations that I made mostly connect to the state level and the process of Islamization that was started after the revolution. Whereas at the societal level, also there was a process of Islamization, but then Iranian society has to be understood as also in its historical context and also including its pre-revolutionary history. And it's multi-ethnic, it's multi-religious, and it has also, I would argue, a strong dose of cosmopolitanism. So against this backdrop, there is, in fact, quite a lot of tolerance, I think, at the societal level, because of this plurality of ideas, of religions, of ethnicities that have been in place for very long. The problem occurs when there is the intervention of politics along the lines that I explained earlier, where the state fears that there might be challenges to its dominant ideology of Shiism. But yet again, Shiism is also not monolithic. There have always been, in the history of Shiism, voices of dissent by Shia theologians, scholars, and people of faith against those of the same faith who chose to be collaborators of the state or, very much aspiring to power. So this tension has always existed also within Shiism, and this kind of reluctance and criticism vis-a-vis a Shia clergy that might assume state power. But basically, in today's political structure, those dissenting Shia voices have been quite marginalized, as the supreme leader of Iran has also was also very much implicated in also influencing this network of Shiism in Iran, also for political purposes.
So in terms of the politicization of religion, this is when minority religious groups or people who don't adhere to the values on the state level may face problems.
Yes, there are, as I said, I'm no expert on this, but there is persecution, legal persecution for people who may convert. But I think, and it always depends. It's not a systematic kind of persecution of people who may, convert. And since the whole atmosphere has been quite politicized, there are a lot of fears that those conversions may have a political motivation. So there might be some degree of skepticism from the authorities' side. But in terms of the exact legalities of persecution, I'm not the expert. In terms of freedom of expression and freedom of religion, of course, if you look at the history of reformism, the intellectual history, you have all those reformist intellectuals who have been quite prominent in the public debate over the last few decades. Most notably, apogee of the reformist movement starting in the late 1990s, in arguing that, for the compatibility of Islam and democracy, one, and secondly, also for more liberties of expression. But it doesn't mean that those religious intellectuals were in fact arguing for a veritable democratization of the political system and the inclusion of all kinds of various ideologies and ideas into the public debate. For instance, they have remained quite reluctant to embrace the interests of the lower classes or of some kind of socialist ideas. So it has been only a partial effort to open up the debate, to open up the space for political liberties and other liberties. Despite being more tolerant than the conservatives and the fundamentalists in Iran, have failed to really pursue a veritable opening up political space. So they cannot really consider to be torchbearers for all those kind of discriminated groups in Iran. I mean, as I said, relatively speaking, they're better than the opposing side, but it doesn't mean that they have been supporters of veritable liberalization and democratization and veritable tolerance.
What developments do you see happening in the next couple of years, particularly after the 2021 Iranian presidential election?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see there's going to be much change, or will it be the status quo?
So I'm assuming that we're going to see more continuity than change. But when it comes to the changes, I mean, first of all, when it comes to the issue of freedom of expression, and you can look it up at various world rankings in terms of freedom of expression and freedom of thought and freedom of the media and so forth, Iran doesn't rank well. So there is a lot of limitations. And so the state media basically is very much doesn't include a lot of dissenting voices, whereas there are some reformist outlets and dailies who occasionally are quite critical, but they also have to abide by the red lines of the system, which is to talk about the role of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps or the role and power of the supreme leader. So all those red lines have to be respected by all state-affiliated media. But within that limited landscape of media, there is some kind of vibrancy of debate, for sure. But this is, as I said, limited to state-sponsored sphere. So probably we're going to see the victory of a candidate that is close or even coming from the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And because of the deep-seated crisis of the reformist or moderate camp, there is a big chance that we're going to see a déjà vu of last year, which is one, historically low voter turnout, because there is a lot of public alienation toward the system. And the leadership in Tehran also is very much cognizant of this scenario. There is a hardline cleric in Iran that is quite notorious. His name is Ahmad Khatami, was talking about the virus of indifference that these elections may face from society. So there's a lot of efforts to drive up voter turnout because there are still elements within the Islamic Republic who regard the voter turnout as a kind of legitimacy index for the political system. But we're probably going to see someone from the IRGC or someone close to the IRGC going to win the presidency. One possible scenario is that we're going to see such a new president being more reliant on nationalism as a chief ideological motor rather than Islamism. So in the ideological mix of the Islamic Republic, which is nationalism and Islamism, slowly but surely the role of nationalism will increase because Islamism in its revolutionary ideology and propaganda has lost much of its popular acceptance. So it cannot really be that useful as it used to be, especially decades ago, in order to mobilize public support. So, and this development is also very much understood, I think, by a lot at the leadership level. So that within this nationalist Islamist mix, nationalism is going to play a more important role. In terms of social liberties, first of all, of course, a president close to the IRGC might be more heavy-handed, might be more iron-fisted, more relying on repression, while portraying itself as some kind of a modernizer, basically. There is a possibility even that we're going to see some relaxation of social restrictions because against the background that the entire society is feeling the pain at various levels. So there are various crises that are inflicting Iran, which I describe as a triple crisis: the socioeconomic, the political, and the ecological crisis that are plaguing the country, especially over the last few years, that have been seen a lot of revolutionary uprisings for the first time from the lower classes that were hitherto considered to be the social base of the regime, or at least loyal to it. So the crisis level is quite elevated. And in this context, if you just rely on repression only, you may actually perpetuate the timing of an explosion, a popular explosion. So against this backdrop, there might be even the possibility of some social relaxation, for instance, maybe on the hijab, or although, I mean, this is also not clear. I mean, it could also be not the case. It depends on the developments. But from a power perspective, there is some rationale for the new leadership in Iran, or the new presidency in Iran, to offer some relaxation. So in how far this is going to materialize, we're going to see. But the rationale of such relaxations is to avoid that pressures pile up and cannot be contained at some point. They're going to explode, and they're going to be very difficult to manage. In any case, we're going to see the monopolization of power by those centers of power that are the most important right now. They are somehow referred to as the deep state, centered around the IRGC, the so-called religious foundations, who are de facto economic empires, and also the supreme leader of Iran, who is also a very important center of power in Iran. So the dominance that all those centers of power have so far, economically, financially, in the intelligence services, but also when it comes to driving foreign policy, especially in the region, they're going to extend their power onto the presidency. So what kind of effect and ramifications this monopolization of power by the hardliners or the wider conservative camp will have, we'll have to see.
Dr. Ali Fathollah-Nejad, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John, for having me.
Good day, Kian. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
So, Kian, could you please explain what growing up in Iran was like?
To be honest, in my opinion, the answer to this question is divided into two parts: childhood and adolescence, and after adolescence. I think childhood and adolescence is the golden age of life in Iran. Children don't see the problems of society and only enjoy life. Of course, I was no exception, but for young people, problems start slowly. Problems such as relationships with the opposite sex, financial problems, restrictions, and so on. These problems were even more severe in my youth. For example, 10 to 15 years ago, you couldn't go out with your girlfriend or boyfriend. You couldn't have a girlfriend or boyfriend at all, except in secret. Otherwise, your family, society, and government would blame you. This was one of the hundreds of problems I faced after adolescence.
Why did you choose to leave Islam?
I hadn't had and won't have any problems with Islam, and I respect that. I believe that all religions are respectable and are a way to achieve self-realization and God-realization. But in Iran, religion is inherited. So when you are born into a Muslim family, you must be a Muslim. For all that, Islam was not the way for me to grow and become aware. So I decided to leave it.
Could you please explain the key tenets of Eckankar?
Eckankar teaches that spiritual liberation in one's lifetime is available to all, and that it is possible to achieve self-realization and God-realization in one's lifetime. The membership card for Eckankar states, being to take soul by its own path back to its divine source. One of the basic tenets is that soul may be experienced separate from the physical body and in full consequence travel freely in other planes of reality.
What would happen if your family, friends, or even the authorities in Iran knew of your choice of faith?
Oh, I think it depends on the type of family and their beliefs. In my opinion, there will be no serious problems among friends and family. Maybe they will advise you or leave their relationship with you, and maybe even nothing happened. But if the authorities find out you are not a Muslim and you are an atheist, you will definitely have a problem. You will be arrested and maybe even executed.
Why do you believe Eckankar is considered a danger in Iran?
Oh, the government has announced this, complained about the Eckankar organization in the United States, and after that, all the books related to Eckankar become illegal in Iran, and the translators of these books faced problems.
Has your faith almost been discovered?
When I wanted to come here in Imam Khomeini Airport, when I had a flight, I had some books about Eckankar in my backpack, and it was so dangerous for me because in the Imam Khomeini Airport you are checked 2 times, uh, and if they could find my books, I was arrested, and that was very dangerous for me.
But they didn't discover your books.
Fortunately, no.
And what do you plan to do with your future?
To be honest, in my opinion, as far as future is concerned, there is no absolute issue in the world. The only thing that I can say is that I will be somewhere that I can help people. No differences between Iranian or foreigner people. Definitely, it would be more enjoyable for me if I could help my people in Iran. Finally, we have to see what happens in the future.
Kian, thank you so much.